My name is Wynveen. I'm a junior and a BEM major, and I attended the Naval Academy Leadership Conference this past week in Annapolis, Maryland. Some of my biggest takeaways that I got were, first and foremost, the importance of understanding and knowing a little bit about each aspect of your industry. So in our case, business. And this was actually talked about by Dean Reineman, or the previous Dean Reineman, now Mr. Reineman, who was also the CEO of PepsiCo before he moved over here in 2008 to Wake Forest Business School. But he really talked a lot about, in his speech, the importance of understanding all the different aspects of business. So if you're a manager in the operations department, it's also good to understand, the importance of marketing, accounting, finance, different aspects like that, and HR, so that when you're talking to different managers, different employees, whether they work for you or whether you work for them down the road, it's important to be able to relate to them and understand the importance of what they're doing. And so that's why I paralleled that a lot with what we learned here at the business school, because we had the core curriculum where everyone takes OB, which is a lot like human resources, and everyone takes a finance class, a couple accounting classes, marketing, operations, and it's a good way, so no matter where you end up going in the business world down the road, it can definitely ensure that you have a respect and understanding for all the different aspects of business that'll be in front of you. Another key one was to buy into your people. So that was what we heard all around from just about everybody who walked through. A few key points just about all of our speakers touched on. So we had speakers such as Dick Cheney and Madeleine Albright, who are previous vice president and secretary of state. That was a pretty big deal. They were actually on the same panel, which was very interesting. We also had Simon Sinek, who's a very popular and famous TED talker. So maybe not quite a name brand, but once you went online, you definitely would have seen his face in a handful of videos. And then, of course, Mr. Reineman, who we've had, here at Wake Forest for a very long time and is still a dear part of our organization. We also had, previous Navy SEALs, 5-star commandants, the 34th commander of the U.S. Marines was there, James Conway, and we also had anyone in between. So politics, business, and in the military as well. So it was really James Foley, who was a previous Blue Angels pilot, said when you first meet people, you need to connect with the heart first and then with the head, because humans are more alike than we are different in a lot of ways, although we tend sometimes to focus on our differences. And so he was actually one of the first Americans to go into Soviet Russia right after the Berlin Wall fell. So they brought the Blue Angels over, and they had competitions with the Soviet Russian equivalent of the Blue Angels, and they're sort of, they're the pilots that fly really close together in an awesome formation, and they're with the Navy. And he said that the first thing that he did when it wasn't really clicking very well, since they didn't speak the same language, him and the Russian pilots, they sat down and tried to talk about their families and showed each other pictures of their families and their lives. And the ambassador to the Soviet Union at the time came up to him afterwards and said that him and the other pilots had done more for foreign affairs from the U.S. to Russia in 15 minutes, speaking with those pilots, learning about their families, connecting with the heart first, than in the previous decade or two of really trying to just think of it logically and work through these problems and debate these problems, which had come up a lot with the Cold War. And so that really resonated with me, of connect with everyone with the heart first and then the head, so really get to know everyone that you're working with. And I think that really parallels what Mr. Reineman said when he said, nobody cares what you know until they know that you care. And so to really show your passion and how much you care about those you're working with and working around, and show that you're passionate about what you're doing, that you have a purpose in what you're doing, I think is very important. Another key that everyone hit on was gratitude and humility. So I know we have those in the pillars and on the walls here on campus and on the screens, but I think it's always good, especially when you're at a place like Wake Forest. You probably had success most all of your life, to still sit down and be humble and grateful for everything that you've done in your life, for all the opportunities, and for all those who have sacrificed their time and energy, whether that's parents, friends, mentors, in order to get you to the place where you are. And so that really sort of stuck with me the last couple of days since I came back, and is something I hope to continue carry with and really hold dear and close to me every single day, just continuing every day with gratitude and humility, because I think that's very important for leadership. Another thing was to have ownership and take responsibility. So I I don't know about you, but I know there are times where I make excuses in my day-to-day life, and I'm going to try, I think now in 2018, I'll make it my midway through January 2018 goal to sort of eliminate that as much as possible. And what I learned from these leaders is even when, they were on the border of being fired or being released from their positions because of, different issues. Think of, the Rwandan genocide back when Secretary Albright was there, or Mr. Wynveen was saying back when he was CEO of Pizza Hut and they were working on their delivery system, it was a complete fail the first time around, and he said he was almost let go at that time. It really resonated with me when he said all he had to do was step up and take ownership and say, I'm going to fix this. And so that's something that I want to try to carry with me every day now that I've learned some of these experiences, which are far greater than any decision I've had to make in my life, and how these individuals have sort of taken a step back and been humble and said, look, I'm going to take complete responsibility and ownership for my actions. And so I think in the day-to-day stressor of life, we don't always sit down and realize what great opportunities we have, or we don't always sit down and look at the people around us and say well, I'm glad to be spending time with my best friends or my roommates, whoever it is, or to be sitting in class in the class that you're very interested in. And so what we were told by John Foley was, he said every day when we wake up we should say, I'm glad to be here. Whatever we're in a meeting, at the end of the meeting, say, I'm glad to be here. And so really having that sense and really sort of digging that in of the idea of I'm glad to be here because I really care about this, and this is a place where I want to be. And so I'm going to try to carry that more into my day-to-day. And then I guess the idea of a higher purpose. So we were told a couple of times, if you don't have an idea of a higher purpose in whatever work you're doing, you're going to get burned out. And I think every once in a while, we as students especially lose sight of that higher purpose. And so we just focus on getting through this class because it's required of us or because we needed to graduate, when we don't actually think of the higher purpose of, the whole body of work of what we're doing, or, we're here at school so we can support ourselves down the road. And so we sort of put on the blinders and only look very short-sighted, is almost if we're looking through a fog or something and we can't see all the way down the road. And so when they mentioned that, I really saw some of that fog clear, at least in my mind. And so this semester I'm going to try to be better at that and really take things more, take a step back whenever something bad happens, take perspective, and try to look at things from a less emotional, more objective perspective, and really look at what my higher purpose is of, being here at school and completing my work and one day joining the workforce, and not just doing it because it's the steps that are required of me, but doing it because I have an actual purpose, and goal down the road long term.